Hello and welcome back to the studio. Grey shirt means that we're going to be talking about 5 possible tips or more that as an acrylic artist you might be doing wrong. If that's something you're interested in, just stay with me and we'll get straight onto it.
It's time to learn with our friend Clive. So grab your brush, have a great time. And don't forget to click subscribe.
So if this is the first time you've seen one of my videos, please click the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to click that notification bell. So, what's the first thing? Now, this is something I've been preaching about years and years and years. I just need to adjust the camera. Years and years and years. And that is the overuse of this stuff. This is H2O, or what's commonly known in the art trade as water. Now, we all know that acrylic paint is a water-based paint. That is a solvent. It is used as a solvent. It is used to thin down your paints a smidge. And I mean a smidge. You should never use it as a medium. Why do I say that? Because on a molecular level, too much of H2O will basically break down the acrylic polymer resin. On a molecular level, it stops these things from holding hands and working together, basically. Let me show you in a quick demonstration what I mean. So there is your paint. So this pot represents your canvas, the paper represents your film, and I've got a little incense stick here. There we go. So what I want you to see is if you add water to the paint, it's going to slowly break down the surface tension and the molecular bonds. The more water you add to the paint, the more it's going to destroy that paint film on a molecular level. They reckon you should never use more than 45% water, because what's going to happen is these little molecules are going to stop holding hands. That's basically, in a nutshell, in layman's terms, what I'm talking about. So as you can see, that the more water you add, my incense stick has gone out, the more water you add, then obviously there's going to be more gaps and holes in your paint. Basically, in a nutshell. So let's just put that down out the way so I don't start another fire. So how do we get around this? Well, as you can see, there's our acrylic paint. There's our acrylic paint there. Let me just get a brush. We'll talk about brushes in a minute. Let me just get a brush. So there's our acrylic paint. Now, if we thin down that with water, you can see the more water we get on there, the more wishy-washy it becomes, and the more wishy-washy it becomes, the less stable it is. Now, that's only the case on canvas, wood, canvas panels. It's not a case on water or cardboard. You can thin down acrylic paint as much with water as you want on something like this, which is cardboard or paper, because the paint is going to soak into the paper, basically, soak into the cardboard and hold in place. But if it's on something like a canvas, it's more likely to flake off, especially on substrates like wood. It's more likely to flake off and cause you serious problems. So how can we cure that? Well, this has been a thing of mine for a number of years, and what you can do is go out and purchase some fluid medium. This is glazing medium. There you go. This is like a glazing medium. Any glazing medium. You can have it matte, you can have it in gloss, and I buy it in bulk. I buy these things in bulk. So we are. I buy them in big bottles like that. In fact, big 5-litre containers, and then I can sell them on to you at a reduced rate. So it's going to be cheaper. So just pop along to www.clive5art.co.uk and have a look at my mediums. Now, you can use this for glazing, you can use it for varnishing, and that's all it is just a pure resin. And what I mean is a pure resin, it's got no pigment in it. I'll explain to you how a paint is made in a second. So by adding that to your paint, you're maintaining its bondage. Then you actually added more resin to it to enable you to keep those bonds in place, to keep those little hands holding each other, so it's not going to flake or cause you any major problems. Now the only problems with this is the more of this you add to the paint, the quicker it's going to dry. Normally it'll dry within 10 to 20 minutes. That's another point I've got to come on to in just a second. But the only other way you can get to cure that is to add a little bit of this and a little bit of water to that. So about 20% of water to a glazing medium should give you enough of a stability there to play around. But that can work out an expensive thing. So over the years, what I've done is I've gone and developed a medium mix. Now that is not just a mixture of resin and water. There is other things in there as well. It's called a medium mix for the simple reason is there's a lot of other ingredients in there that allows this to flow, act like water. You can thin this down 50-50. So a small bottle like that, which is about, this one is about 200 grams I think, will give you 200 mils, which will give you 400 mils of medium mix, which you use in place of water, and that is going to give you a really, really stable painting surface. So I'm just going to set that one side and I'll let that dry for a second. Now, how is paint made? Now, it's important that we have a think about this in order to understand why it dries so quick, what we can add to it, and basically how we work with it. That's the other thing. So basically all paint is a mixture of pigment. That is pure pigment there. To that they add fillers. In this particular instance it's marble dust or calcium carbonate, or there's other fillers out there as well that's a bit contaminated, but there's fillers in there. That's what they call fillers. There's also H2O or water. So there's actually water in that, and there's other things added to the water to allow it to not be so runny. In fact, how can you thicken water? Well, that's a trade secret. So, and then there's anti-foaming agents. There's other resins and things that they add into that the paint mixture as well. So basically all this is added together, and then it's mixed up on an industrial scale. They go through big rollers and stuff like that, and big pans, and basically you come up with a tube of paint like this. Now I make all my own paint by hand, so everything I've just showed you there is added into my paint, and I can alter its thickness, I can alter the amount of pigment that goes into it, and basically make your own paints. Very simple. If you want to know how to make your own paints, just click on the iCards there. But as I said, these are available on the website as well, www.clive5art.co.uk. So I don't know what tip I'm on now, it doesn't matter. I'm not counting them. So acrylics dry very quick. Yeah, they do. Now you've seen me using something in the studio on a regular basis, which I do because I'm making video lessons, and I also paint very thin layers of acrylic paint. Sometimes you can paint very thickly in passo. So the use of this particular thing is to be used with caution. I'm not saying never use it. What I'm saying is always be cautious, because it can cause cracks, it can cause flaking. Just because a surface of acrylic is dry, it doesn't mean that the underlying layers are dry. And again, like this stuff, this is stretch wrap or cling film. Stretch wrap or cling film, as you can see. Now if you wrap that around your hand, don't cut off your circulation and you lose your hand. If you wrap it around your hand like that and then leave that for about 10 minutes or so, you'll see that you start to sweat. So the moisture in your hand can't get through the plastic film, and the same is to be said when you use a hairdryer on acrylic. So what you're doing is you're drying the surface of the paint, but you're not drying the underlying layers of the paint, so the moisture can be trapped. I'm not saying it will be trapped. I'm saying there's a possibility, depending how thick you put that paint on your substrate, you can trap moisture in there. That's not what you want. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about your use of one of these things. This is a hairdryer that I pinched off my wife. Now you'll see me using this during my lessons because I just need to speed the process up, and I don't normally keep the paintings that I do on YouTube. I normally throw them away or reuse the canvases to such a state that I can't paint on them anymore. Sometimes I give them to charity, sometimes I take them to charity shops or whatever. It doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is, you were better off letting your painting air dry, especially if it's over a certain thickness. If you're painting very thin layers like me, there's not a major problem, but if you start painting in passo, let it air dry. Or do what I normally do when I'm painting a project, is learn about the drying time of acrylics. Get the feel of the paint. This is what I try to explain in my lessons, is get the feel of that paint. So start on one section, moving down onto another section. Hopefully by the time you get used to things, you'll be able to revisit an area you've already painted because you know it's dry. That's the key. So how do we save our paints? Well, we can use wet palettes. We can use paper plates, anything like that. We can cover these things with tin foil like that. So if you've got a palette of paint, let's just use this as an example. Let's get a bit of my yellow paint. In fact, let's use this one because we're going to revisit it. So if I wanted to save that from drying, I don't know how good it's going to be on cardboard, but if this is on a paper plate or a tin or just a ceramic plate or something, you could just spray it with water like that, and then you could just place over some aluminium we call it, aluminum in America. It's aluminium. You say tomato, I say tomato. Let's make the whole thing right. So you could cover it like that. You could put that in the fridge. You could even freeze it. They say, can you freeze acrylic paint? By doing that, you're forming ice crystals in the paint. You're adding water to it. Give it a try. I don't know. I've never actually frozen acrylic paint, so I can't say. Or you can get some of this, which we've just shown you. This is the stretch wrap. Again, if you've got a paper plate, you could stretch wrap that over. That's going to trap a little bit of moisture in. And you're using a mister bottle. There you go. Let me just... The wife's going to kill me because I've just used some of the stretch wrap from the house. Don't tell her. She'll beat me up. The other thing you want to do... I am losing track of how many tips this is. The other thing you want to do is get yourself a fine mist atomizer bottle. These are available on the website www.clive5art.co.uk. That is an atomizer bottle. Basically, about, I would say, this is a slightly bigger one that I use in the studio, every 20 minutes or so on the paint, I just give it a little mist like that. That's all you need. Squirt. Psht. And it's done. So you're doing is stopping the surface of the paint from drying out on you. It goes sticky and tacky and all gloopy and horrible, and it's just going to affect your painting. So going back to mediums, you can use the actual resin itself to varnish a painting if you want to. If I want to use it to, I haven't got a painting to hand. So let's say my Welsh Dragon behind me now. If I wanted to varnish that, I could just put a glaze of gloss or matte resin over that, or glazing medium. I can mix 50% gloss, 50% matte together and get a semi-gloss or semi-gloss, as they say in the UK. You say tomato, I say tomato. So let's call the whole thing off. What that's going to do is equalize the paint. So if you've got a little bit of a matty bit and a little bit of a glossy bit, and you want to uniform the sheen on the painting, either use a matte, which is going to matte it, a gloss, which is going to gloss it, or a 50-50 mix of gloss and matte, which is going to give you a semi-gloss finish. And that's going to equalize your painting sheen. That's it. It's not a varnish, because once that's dry, it's dry. It bonds with the acrylic paint. It's going to be a nightmare. The reason they varnish paintings in the old days is to be able to put a protective coat, a film, over the actual painting itself, as you can see. So they put a varnish on that, and it's a varnish that you can remove from there. So there's other varnishes on the market. You've got this particular brand, which is Winsor & Newton. I don't know why this darkened up. It's a Winsor & Newton. That's a gloss varnish. Now, I'm not too sure if this particular one is resin based or not. But I'll make sure when you buy varnishes that it's removable varnish, because what's going to happen is you varnish painting with that, and then over the years, all the muck and the dust and all the old cigarette smoke and all this stuff that used to fall onto these paintings back in the day will stick to that, and then the restorers can come along then and they can pick it off, or use chemicals to remove the varnish, which leaves the painting film intact. And that's basically what varnish is. So I'll leave that to you. Okay, so we are running in. This is running a bit longer than I wanted to run. I want to quickly talk about another problem that we've got with acrylics is the use of brushes. What brushes do I use? Well, I use normally my own brands of brushes. There are other brands out there. These are sympathetic brushes, yes, because they sympathise with me on a big level. No, they're synthetic. They're a synthetic monofilament type of brush. In other words, they're plastic hairs. That's what they are. They're man-made and they're plastic hairs. That's all they are, is plastic hairs. And these come in long handles and they come in short handles, as you can see. Some of them are more used than others. And these are really good because at the end of the day, I would say using a plastic filament with plastic paint is one of the best things. Easier to clean, easier to degunk, and basically easier to use, because they run a lot smoother over the surface of the paint. There are other brushes that you can use. You can use conventional decorators, DIY brushes that you will find in the DIY shop. There you go. There's nothing wrong with these. This is particularly monofilament again. This is a man-made hair. It's made out of plastic. So if you're using a bigger canvas, then use a bigger brush. That's what I would say. There's no point painting on a 6 foot by 4 foot canvas with a 1 inch brush. So you go and get a bigger brush. These are also good for doing grounds and putting gessos on and all that type of stuff, and painting in different styles. So if you want a bigger brush, then there's nothing stopping you going to the DIY store and buying one of those brushes. But they are also available on my website, www.clive5art.co.uk. And as I said, they do come in long handles as well. So I'm just going to put them one side, and I want to talk about natural bristle brushes. There we go. These are natural bristle brushes. Again, these are my foliage brush set. This is one of them, one particular brush in that set, which I use for foliage. And I find that national, depends what part of the country you live. This is a national brush. A natural bristle brush, hog hair or something like that. You can have deer hair. You can have all these different things, badger hair, and I don't know, all that stuff. They work really well, but you've got to look after these. They've got to be conditioned. They've got to be washed well. The bristles do tend to absorb in the pigment of paint, but that's not a major problem, is it? As long as we look after these bristle brushes. Again, this is an old DIY bristle brush. You can see it's seen its better days because I've used it a lot for big paintings and trees and things like that. So it's basically a bigger cousin of that one. Again, fan brushes, you can get these in bristles as well. These are bristle brushes. So you need to condition these, you need to wash them well. And I also sell, yes, he's selling again. I also sell a full set of long-handled, there you go, of long-handled brushes on the website. These are all man-made fibres. You've got short flats, you've got rounds, you've got little detailed brushes, and in all a nice size. There you are, they're all a nice size you can use, and they're available at www.clive5art.co.uk, and they're specifically for acrylics, which they work really well. But if you've got some bristle brushes, that's the best thing you can use, in fact. So what I suggest you do is wash your brushes really well. Make sure you give them a really good wash. Soap is another thing. There is nothing stopping you using conventional house soap if you want to. I'd use the baby soap. Something that, the soft soap, but you don't want anything harsh in there. You can also use some of this stuff. There we go, because I didn't put this out. This is called Star Drops, or something like Windex, but make sure that it has not got any vinegar in it, because you don't want that, because it's going to destroy the bristles. But this is good stuff, and all you basically need to do with that is you can put a little bit in a pot. You can thin down some acrylics with this too. You can thin down the acrylics if you're going to use an air gun or something. I used to use this to thin down with a percentage of water to thin down my acrylics to get it to go through the airbrush. Basically, you get your brush. You wash your brush out in some soap with some warm water, or not warm water. Never use warm water. Never use warm water on real bristles, because it'll make them swell. Don't leave your brushes soak in water neither, because they will swell and it'll cause other problems with the brush. I've mentioned all this before so many times. Anyway, once you've washed your brush, give it a little dip into this stuff like that. Nurture your brushes. Give them a little wash. Scrub their backs. There we are. Give them a little wash like that. Rinse this out then into some nice, clean, fresh H2O. We've got some H2O. Where did I put my H2O? There's my H2O. Rinse that out then, like that. You get a little bit of kitchen paper. Now you can rub that into a little bit of soap if you want to. You can rub it into a little bit of soap. This is one of my soaps that I sell on the website. There you go. This is handmade soap. Yes, this is handmade soap. My mother used to make soap. And we used to sell it on a market stall. And this is one of my mother's recipes. God rest her soul. And this is just it's a nice soap. It's there's nothing in that. It's just soap. It's just basically soap. So what you need to do, once you got your brush, you've washed it in there, you rub that onto a little bit of soap like that. There you go. Rub it onto a little bit of soap. I make all this soap myself by hand. I make it in batches, and I put them in a mold, and then I let them set, which take a while. And then I package them up, and then you can buy them on the website www.clive5art.co.uk. So you let that dry, and once that's dry, always lay your brushes flat. I'll show you why. Always lay your brushes flat like that, and then you let that dry, and it goes all hard, because when you buy brushes from the store, you'll find that they've got a covering on them. There's normally something like a gum arabic or something they put on it to protect the shape of the brush. And then before you use that, just give it a little dip in some water like this. Little dip in the water. Get your brush, rinse it out, make sure that's all done, and that's lovely and soft. And wow, I tell you what, I think I'll wash my hair after. So what happens if you leave your brushes soak in water, which is not a good thing to do, because I've seen so many people over the years, they get their pots like that, and they leave their brushes soak in water, and even though this is sealed against air, there's a machine that's called a crimper, and it crimps this is the ferrule onto the handle. Handles of wood. I don't know if you notice, my particular brushes, my foliage brushes are not painted. They're not painted because they're a bit cheaper. But I have got brushes here, especially something like, I got one here somewhere. There it is. I've left this one soak in some water, as you can see. But look what happens. look what happens. It all swells and all the paint flakes off. And it makes your brushes look ugly. And it's not good for the brush, because once that starts to swell, in here as well, this is glued to that. The bristles are glued as well. The bristles are inserted in there. There's a spot of glue put on them. There's a bit of glue on here. The machine comes along and then crimps the metal part, which is called a ferrule. And that's your brush assembled. But if you leave them soak in water, this is what happens. Either your bristles are going to fall out, or your handle is going to come off. That is not a major problem, your handle coming off, because you can always put a bit of PVA glue or school glue on that and stick them back on. But if you look in there, I don't know if you can see, if you look in there, you'll see some glue holding those bristles in place. So if your handle comes off, put a spot of glue in there, let it dry, and then put that back on there, and you should be able to recover your brush. But you don't need to do any of that if you don't let your brush soak in water. So there you go. That's a way to look after your brushes. And just on another point, if you're going to wash your brushes, always wash it in dirty water first, like that. Get all the pigment out. Get as much pigment out as you possibly can. Get some soap. Give it a nice little... Load it up with some soap like that. You don't have to hold it in your hand. You don't have to hold it in your hand at all. You don't have to. Just get some nice lather. Put it back in your dirty water like this. Let's get some more kitchen roll. Back in some dirty water like that. You can rinse it out in some clean water, because I know that's clean water. It is, yes. You can rinse it out in some clean water. If that water remains clear, you know you've got all the pigment out of that. If this, you should do this at every single session. So every time you stop painting, wash your brushes. Every time you start painting, wash your brushes. If you've got some of this Windex or Star Drops or something, just give it a little dip in that. There you go. That's conditioned. You get some soap. You rub it 2 or 3 times on there. You seal it like that. You lay that down. Lay it down. Don't stand it up, because you're going to have the same problem. It's going to loosen. All that water's going to drop down in there and loosen that. And then just let that down. And then before you come to use it again, just to reiterate, just give it a quick wash. And you're ready to go. There you go. You are ready to go. Now, have I got anything else to say? I don't think so. So I think we're going to call that it. I don't know how many tips that was, but I know there's possibly more than 5. So thank you very much for joining me in the studio in Wales. And please click the subscribe button, which is down there. And over there is the link to the shop. Please pop along and have a look. There's other products in there. You can make your own paint. You can make your own gessos. Wonderful stuff. Pigments, brushes, you name it, it's in there. And thank you very much. And I'll see you on another one. Bye.